I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. On Thursday, Congressman Andy Biggs accused Democrats of holding a judiciary hearing on clemency to simply further their own political agenda. Biggs slams Democrat-backed criminal justice reform initiatives, claiming they would actually put public safety at risk. Here's more from the Arizona Republican.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate you holding this hearing today. Today's hearing is entitled Oversight Hearing on Clemency in the Office of the Pardon Attorney. It is interesting, and I appreciate you reporting that you attempted to bring the new pardon attorney to our hearing today. The new pardon attorney is Elizabeth G. Oyer. She served 10 years as a federal public defender, and I look forward to hearing her in the future about the pardon attorney's position and her thoughts on the proposals that we're going to hear today. This hearing is actually just another in a series of hearings that furthers the agenda of my friends on the other side of the aisle with their intention of totally reforming the justice system and with some of their initiatives actually putting the public safety at risk. The first in the series was a hearing on controlled substances, federal policies, and enforcement. In that hearing, while arguing for drastic reform of our drug laws, one of the majority's witnesses likened our nation's drug laws to Jim Crow laws. Then the subcommittee held a hearing entitled From Miranda to Gideon, a call for pretrial reform. My colleagues on this subcommittee have some interesting, actually dangerous ideas about pretrial criminal justice reform, and one of them introduced the No Money Bail Act of 2021. This bill would eliminate bail in the federal system and withhold federal grant money from states that don't eliminate their bail. We've seen time and time again all over this country the disastrous and deadly consequences of eliminating bail. At that hearing, we heard from a grieving mother who lost her son because the state of New Jersey implemented bail reform that allowed a convicted felon back out onto the street. Next, we had another hearing on undoing the damage of the war on drugs, a renewed call for sentencing reform. This was another hearing where the majority's witnesses called for decriminalizing drug possession for all drugs, and no matter how much drugs that they had in their possession. And that brings us to today's hearing on clemency. In my reading of Article 2, Section 2 is that the president has broad authority to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses. The president ultimately makes the decision on how to reprieve or provide clemency. And thus the president actually has the opportunity and, quite frankly, I think has the obligation to create the rubric for granting clemency and the standards that the president's going to look at before granting reprieves, pardons, and commutations or clemency. So, with that in mind, I don't think anybody in the room doubts the president has constitutional authority in this area, nor do we think that the president's authority to commute sentencing of drug offenders is outside of the scope of the president's authority. And so, because the Constitution seems to vest that authority with the president, the rubric seems to also lie with the president. Just because the president may commute such sentences does not necessarily mean that the president should take action at all. While such commutations do not raise constitutional concerns, they certainly can raise public safety concerns. During the last 2 years, the United States has seen a spike in violent crime. In 2020, the United States tallied more than 20,000 murders, the highest total since 1995, and 4,000 more than in 2019. And FBI data preliminarily for 2020 points to a 25% surge in murders. This would be the largest single-year increase since the agency began publishing uniform data in 1960. Last year, in America, there were more than 105,000 drug overdoses. That follows a record in 2020 with more than 91,000 overdose deaths. Now may not be the time, despite what the Biden administration and any of my colleagues believe, to release drug traffickers and dealers back into our communities and neighborhoods. Just last month, the Biden administration commuted the sentences of 75 drug traffickers and dealers. President Obama similarly commuted the sentence of 1,715 drug offenders. And some of those granted clemency by President Obama went on to reoffend not long after they were released, many back to selling and trafficking drugs. At a time when overdose deaths and violent crime is surging, this subcommittee should probably not look to ways to let more drug dealers and traffickers out of prison early. And more importantly, in some respects, is the philosophy of this, and that is that it is the president's prerogative. That means it's the president who either designs, accepts the current rubric, or implements a new rubric in determining early releases, commutations, pardons, reprieves. We can comment on it, is my position, but I don't think we can legislatively, at least in a constitutional manner, impose upon the president our will on how the president determines to grant reprieves and pardons. That is plenary power exclusively reserved to the President of the United States. Madam Chair, with that, I'll yield back.